Okay, I am here with Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, Matovcik. What's going on, man?
Nothing, dude. Thanks for having me on. Unfortunately, I'm not as anywhere near as exciting as Kyle Rittenhouse. I wish I was, because man, I'll tell you what, seeing him and Skater die, that was some good stuff, dude. I can't claim credit for that one. That was I think Brian Dawson on Reed's show, but I can't let that one go. I love that joke.
That's a funny joke. I was talking to one of my lefty friends the other day, actually, and we were talking about how I had gotten originally kicked off of Twitter, and then they caught me for ban evading. And he was like, "What did you originally get kicked off for?" I was like, "Oh, I called some dude a faggot because he was defending neocons." And he's like laughing. He's like, "Oh, that's fucking funny." And here, let me read this to you because this is such a great interaction. This dude's like a old school like anarcho syndicalist. Like he's such a cool dude.
Well, I would just say it's totally worth it to get kicked off Twitter for calling someone a faggot for being a neocon.
Yeah. He said, people are mighty uppity about that word. I know some trans people who are hardcore anarchists who call other LGBTQ faggots, LOL. You're not a woman. You're not even a trans woman. You're just a rank and file faggot bitch. And I was like, dude, one of my favorites was Milo. I don't know if you ever heard Milo say this. And he said, Milo said, Democrats were pushing kids to be trans because they can't stand the thought of their kids growing up to be faggots. And so, and oh my God, we were dying about that for like hours. I might want to cut that out, but I'm not going to because it's funny.
Oh no, that's all right, dude. The internet was a lot better when Milo was allowed to be around on the internet, and back when before he got all weird. But yeah, I remember that was kind of actually funny enough. My brother introduced me to Milo, and that's kind of what got me into politics. As crazy as that sounds.
Milo was funny, dude. Like
Yeah.
I disagreed with him most of the time, but he
Mhm.
was fucking hilarious. He cracked me up, man. He
Mhm.
would say some off the wall shit. When he said that about Democrats like being afraid their kid would grow up to be faggots, I just died. I was like, this motherfucker, he just don't even give a shit.
Yeah, dude, it was definitely a sign of the times, and I would almost dare to say that's definitely what made Trump such a cultural phenomena because you had somebody like Milo Yiannopoulos, who, to a lot of people like me at the time, I want to say I was probably in my early 20s, maybe late teens. He came up through the kind of online sphere, and everybody knew him as this gay conservative who would say off the wall shit.
Yeah,
And
didn't he get his fame from like Gamergate? Wasn't that kind of
yeah,
what
yeah, it
put
was
him on
kind
the
of going
map?
against yeah, it was kind of going
Yeah.
against feminists. And as a young kid in school who didn't do too well in school, it just really appealed to me. So whenever my brother showed me him and I saw how hard he went against feminists, I'm like, oh, I like this guy a lot.
Yeah. He was funny, man. He was a funny
Yeah.
dude. Like I don't did you see his first appearance on Legion of Skanks?
No, no, I didn't
Oh
even know that
dude,
was a thing.
that was hilarious. He's been on there twice. Uh,
Oh my
once
god.
once as gay Milo, once as straight Milo. So like it's like you got to go check it out though. The first appearance on Legion of Skanks was fucking epic, man. They got kicked out of a fucking comedy club for fucking announcing he was going to be on the show.
Oh, holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild, but it was funny. It was some of the funniest shit, man. That was hilarious. And when I was over the road, I listened to Legion of Skanks like religiously because I needed something to pound into my ears, and it just fucking killed me every time I listened to it. But
Yeah, I,
yeah,
I remember watching Milo on Joe Rogan, and just it's so strange kind of thinking about how different everything was back then. Like it does not even seem like the same planet. I know we say that about 2019, but like, dude, 2014, 15, 16.
imagine how I feel, man. When I was a teenager, like I'm like, what the fuck happened, man?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like my
If
brother got
I imagine if somebody were to have gone in a coma in 1989 and woke up in 2022, like that would be
uh
like, what the fucking shit is going on here?
Jesus Christ, yeah, they'd fucking beat that dude back into submission just for fucking, speaking a regular sentence. My God.
Yeah. Man, somebody would be like, yeah, you got to pay for my college. He'd be like, quit being a faggot, and they'd fucking shoot him.
Yeah, but it would probably be a white guy, so you wouldn't hear anything about that one.
Yeah,
Yeah, might have to edit that one out
probably.
too. But
Yeah, I don't edit.
Mhm.
Tommy don't edit. I'm like Machete don't text. Tommy don't edit. Like, you get what you get.
Yeah, well, I got to be careful because I did have a childhood friend pretty much call me racist. He did everything but call me racist the other day over. I said I don't care about the Little Mermaid, and I can't believe I'm talking about this on a fucking podcast. But they're casting her as a black character. I'm like, it just seems like pandering to me. It's silly, and literally two of my friends just jumped on me and the one friend wanted me to have a debate with him and like have somebody host it. I'm like, if this is going to be just an hour of us figuring out if I'm an asshole or not, I'm not doing it, dude. Sorry.
Send him the clip of Matt Walsh saying that she should have been a transparent skeleton.
Jesus Christ. Fuck.
Because like, what the fuck are we even talking about? We're talking about stupid fucking childhood films that like I saw Tim Pool was talking about it today, and I was just like, who cares, man? Who gives a shit?
Yeah,
Like,
when I posted that,
I get the culture war. Like I'm down for the culture war, but there's a line. Like I'm like, I don't fucking care about the Little Mermaid. I didn't care about the Little Mermaid when it was a fucking animated cartoon. I definitely don't give a shit today. You know?
yeah,
And
so when I made the tweet, it was literally like just in passing. I'm like, oh, this just seems silly, and then I like moved on from it, and it just became this huge deal. I'm like, guys, you are way overestimating how much I give a shit about this. Like, if there's some kids out there who smile because now they feel represented by Ariel,
yeah, but
whatever.
if some dude showed you his peck and said, "Debate me, motherfucker," I mean, that's he
Okay, yeah,
threw
maybe
down
you
the
have a good point.
gauntlet.
Yeah, then we may have to go to fucking to pump some iron, man. That's definitely
There,
it. Now that's where I draw the line, though.
there's like we'll get you on that debate show, The Crucible, that took blood sports fucking place.
Do some pre-workout, and we'll figure something out. And if there's a stake on the other end, then I'm definitely winning.
You'll debate the Little Mermaid. That would be fucking fantastic.
No, yeah. Well, it was supposed to be because there's some larger thing.
I can't believe the dude wants to call you racist. That's like I've gotten to the point where somebody calls me racist, I was like, okay. Like, okay, what else? What else you got? Can you say anything else? Like, all right, and what's your point? Let's go.
Yeah,
Move on.
I threw out some of like my
because
favorite
you know
actors.
what? Quincy's been at my house more than he's been at yours, you fucker.
Okay, so maybe in relative terms, maybe I am pretty racist.
I don't mean you. I mean whoever calls me racist.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, right. Well, fair enough.
Quincy comes to my house like once a month. Like I don't give a shit. Like call me whatever the fuck you want to call me.
Well, and I hate even talking about this because it sounds so silly, and I'm not saying that.
And it's not even on the subject that we're going to talk about. So
yeah,
I don't even know how this fits in. It does. Don't worry about
it. Yeah. I just kind of throw out like some of my favorite actors and favorite singers. So like my favorite movie is Pulp Fiction. My favorite actor, and I literally have his signature on my episode 2 of Star Wars, which is like the worst movie ever. Samuel L. Jackson, right? One of my favorite singers, my two favorite singers are probably Phil Anselmo or LaJohn Witherspoon from Seven Dust. I mean, these are black people. He was implying that
Phil Anselmo is not a black guy.
Well, more John Witherspoon, Samuel L. Jackson.
I mean, depends on the lighting, but
or how much heroin he had that day. He might be a different shade.
Yeah, he may be closer to blue.
Yeah, in like 1996, yeah, he was definitely probably blue most of the time.
Yeah, Southern Trendkill, that motherfucker was a Smurf.
Yeah, you know what, dude? I will never forget watching the Pantera home videos. And Phil, you could tell this dude is probably just ripped out of his mind. I remember opening my eyes and the doctor says, "Welcome back to life." It was something exactly like that because he OD'd on heroin. But, that was kind of par for the course for him at that time.
But I just got a question. Like, if these black motherfuckers are so goddamn oppressed, why don't they just identify as white? They could just be transracial. Like, There's no such thing as reality. We live in the postmodern world, motherfucker. Words don't mean shit. You could just say you're white. Like, yeah. Could you imagine filling out the application? Like, yeah, I'm Caucasian, and they're looking at you like questioning, and you're like, Jesus, do I hire this motherfucker? Like, what do I do with this son of a bitch?
Well, if you didn't hire the person, even though they identified as another race, then you would probably get hauled off to court. And you're,
if it were that bad, they'd be trying to be white. That's the thing. They get privileges by not being white. And by saying that it's all Whitey's fault. Well, Whitey's a fucking retard, man. I don't identify as white. I identify as interesting. So go fuck yourself.
Yeah, I identify as a Pollock most of the time, so it's okay. I don't really mind.
Who gives a shit, man? It's such a fucking ridiculous argument, but it's this whole thing like we're talking about, like with our text. All right, so this started. I found this TED Talk, and if y'all want to see what TED Talk I'm talking about, go to my Substack, TommySalmons.com. It's the easiest way to get to my Substack. Thank you, Steven, for buying my domain name and attaching it to my Substack for me, you motherfucker. I still have to take ownership of that from you, but I don't, because Steven's a really good friend. Like, and so if he didn't want to pay for it anymore, he can just stop paying for it and tell me, hey dude, you got to pay for this shit now.
You're footing the bill.
Yeah. I mean, it's like what? It's TommySalmons.com. It's not like it's JoeRogan.com. So it probably costs him like $1.50 a year or some shit like that. But so there's this TED Talk where this chick is introducing this new software to where you can sound like your favorite vocalist. And so I put it out on my Substack, and I'm talking about I relate the trans movement, the trans ideology, to the transhumanist movement. And the way I do that is because I'm looking at it and it's like you have these big corporations coming out and telling you are not allowed to be happy with yourself. And in order to feel better about yourself, you need to go pay big pharma and big tech and all these people a shit ton of money so that you can identify as something other than what you actually are. And so this is antithetical to what you do, because you're talking about working out and bettering yourself. You're like a ghetto version of Andrew Tate. So
that's the first time I got that one. I like that. I may have to start writing that.
Yeah, it's like you're like the poor man's version of Andrew Tate, man. Like, but you're talking about bettering your life and bettering yourself and going out there working out and making it part of your routine and being part of this. And this takes time and effort and hard work. And what they're trying to sell these kids is you don't have to do all that time and effort and hard work. So basically you're negating you're getting all the reward without all the work, which means you're getting zero reward in the long run. And one of the things I said to you, if every person is Michael Jordan, there's no such thing as Michael Jordan, right? Because then you're just watching everybody at the same skill set play against each other. And you're watching the Chicago Bulls play, the Dallas Mavericks, and the score comes out to be 3-2, and it's a soccer game now. Right. So we got into this conversation about how all these things relate. And you were like, man, yeah, they're taking the humanity out of things. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what they're doing. There's no such thing as being part of what makes interactions and relationships between human beings, whether it's you and your fiance, me and my wife. I have strengths. She has strengths. Her strengths in many ways cover my weaknesses. My strengths in many ways cover her weaknesses. If everybody's exactly the same strength, right, then what do we do with all these weaknesses? And so you're looking at destroying the way that humans interact and operate as a team in order to accomplish goals. And why would you do that? Why would that be your ultimate goal if not for nefarious reasons? Right. And this is why I'm like so opposed to some like terms like equity, right? Because you're talking about okay, like we're all the same, exactly the same. We're all the exact same. There's no differences, right?
Mhm.
I farm, you farm. Oh, you don't farm. So I got to quit farming. Like, now what? Like, where's the food coming from? Right? Who's working on the cars? You know, who's driving the trucks? Like, where are these things being done? But no, 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 no. Like, we're all going to be the exact same. And you're really devaluing the human experience. Go.
Yeah. No, no, dude, you're good. You're good. Yeah, it really does kind of take the humanity out of things because this really took me a long time to really put my finger on. And I used to think the trans issue was such like an innocuous and innocent, and not a big deal. But though when I started listening to like you and Courtney and even Monica a little bit, Buck, and some of you guys who dig into a little bit more like the globalist stuff, I began to realize that I don't want to sound religious because I'm not necessarily religious, but we are really all unique beings in a certain way. And this globalist push really does take the humanity out of it and separates us from what makes us unique, right? I will never be Ronnie Coleman, right? I'm 5'11, a stocky white guy that comes from a bunch of stocky white guys. And for me to look like Ronnie Coleman, I have to do all sorts of drugs, and I don't have his genetics. But guess what? I could be the best me that I could be. So, the way that I'm going to operate in the gym is going to be dictated by my physiology, and by the way that I can move weights, by the way that my body's set up, by the length of my femur, by the length of my arms, or stuff like that, right? The way I play guitar is going to be different than the way that my other guitar player Jay plays guitar,
Mm.
because he was influenced by Van Halen, a lot of the 80s guys. I'm like an early 2000s metalcore and Pantera kind of guy, right? The real heavy, loud, energetic kind of stuff. That's what
Mm.
I grew up on. But you know if we can all just, like I sent you that video of Dime talking about what makes certain things special in music. If we can all just eliminate that, then like you said, there's no more Michael Jordan if everybody's Michael Jordan. So it used to kind of, I could never really figure out what bothered me so much about bands like Parkway Drive or Born of Osiris, or these bands that are like super heavy and very, very intricate. And not that they're necessarily bad, but it was too clean. It was too perfect, right? Everything was, all the breakdowns and like the chugs and stuff cut perfectly every single time. You never heard that slide of the hand up the string. You never heard the bend where just like one guitar bent a little bit more and the other one didn't hit it just right. Um, it lost all the humanity in it. And
Mm.
that's really what I think is such a shame. And I sent this over to you in text as well, but I'll never forget when we were recording our 4-song EP. Um, the engineer was working on Jen's voice, and I remember hearing him trying to pitch correct it. It just sounded so odd to me. But then he had told her, "Look, you're so spot on. I can't do anything with this." But that's what makes Jen, my singer in A Common Crown, so great, is that she just nails it every single time. Live, you hear it. On the CD, you hear it. But that's her, right? And to take that away or to say that somebody else could be her is just ridiculous to me, because somebody else is going to have a completely different voice. The way that I sing with her is going to be different than the way that somebody else may sing with her. So it's, I don't like this idea of the trans movement and you could be whatever you want to be. And I never realized until, like I said, I started listening to you guys about how this all comes together to be a transhumanist thing where it's literally taking the humanity away from people.
Dime mentioned in that video that you had sent me that he mentions Bob Dylan. And I'm
Mhm.
like, if this were a thing in the 60s, there would have never been a Bob Dylan.
Right.
It would there wouldn't have been a Kurt Cobain.
Mm-hmm.
There wouldn't have been a Lane Staley. There wouldn't have been
No.
some of these masters of the domain, Zach Wild with his overused pitch harmonics and
Mhm.
like, but you can hear, and even with Dime, you would hear some flaws, but some of those
Mhm.
flaws, but he he would turn those flaws into a benefit and move it forward. And that was something that was so pure about music back in the day. And
Mhm.
I think that's why I'm so reluctant to listen to new music anymore, is because it's like it's missing so much of the heart. Because, like you said, it's so robotic. Like if you think about like early progressive music, like Rush or Yes or Kansas, like these bands, they had flaws. UFO, they had flaws, like, right? But they made it work. They knew how to be mathematical geniuses with timing and still work with these little sounds that would occur. And with all the equipment, with all the new technology, they're getting rid of this.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just I want to touch on something you just said a while ago, though. You said you're not religious. So this is something that like caught my eye. And this is kind of what sent me down the path of like studying orthodoxy. So I want to run this by you.
Sure.
All right. So H.G. Wells wrote War of the Worlds, right? But he wasn't just a fiction author. He wrote nonfiction as well. So he wrote several nonfiction essay-ish, like they're longer than essays, but they're like really get into the globalist kind of mindset, because that's who he spent his time with. That's who he was around. One in particular he wrote was called The Open Conspiracy. And in The Open Conspiracy, he's laying out a method to rid religion of its mysticism and replace it with materialism and scientism in order to form a one world government that would then pave the way for a one world. He wanted to form a one world religion that would then pave the way for a one world government. Sorry, misspeak. And so you're talking about religion, and whenever I'm looking at like a trans or some, people that spend too much time in the metaverse, let's say, I'm looking at people that are replacing the old 1,000-year tradition of God with themselves, right? And so rather than being made in the image of God and that image being perfected by the pursuit of the relationship with God, you're looking at people that think they are flawed and that they have to remake themselves into perfection. And so part of what we are dealing with is the atheistic tendency of society. Now, it's not to say that I believe that everybody has to be religious, but there was an idea that was implanted in our heads as we were growing up, that you are what you make yourself to be. And as I look at that, I'm like, no, that's not right. You are born a specific way. You have faults, you have habits, you have quirks, all these different things about you. And you can look at a 2-week-old baby, and you lay two 2-week-old babies next to each other. They don't act the exact same. So like this whole blank slate argument, that's completely ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. Like that's not the way that we interact. There's the genetic gene pool, but when you start trying to replace these bigger ideas, then you start entering a culture like what we're seeing now. And you start to understand these ideas were there for the order that they brought, right? And so the idea of being made in the image of God and not trying to remake yourself in some weird cybernetic way into something that you don't have any physical capabilities of being is insane, and it drives people insane, and it becomes a dogma and an ideology, because people like me or you are going to look at this and be like, I'm not accepting this. Oh, well suddenly we're the bad guys now because I'm unwilling to live in your delusion. Like, I don't want any part of your delusion. You live within this delusion. And so I think a lot of the resurgence, and there is this kind of like resurgence into the religious tradition. And I think a lot of it is because people are witnessing this imbalance. And they're seeing how this imbalance is working. And they're like, wait, things were a lot more sane when we believe that. Like, even if I think everything they're saying is kind of like loony, they had this kind of stabilized order of the way things operated. And it wasn't this out of control, chaotic nonsense that I'm dealing with on this other side. So now you're left with this almost binary decision is like, do I want to deal with the Christians and adhere to their worldview, or do I want to, live with the globalist, whatever you want to call these fucking weirdos, and adhere to their worldview? Well, I can tell you the globalist weirdos worldview makes no sense. At least I can look at the Christians and I can get some sense out of what they're doing over here. So, a lot of people have started moving in that direction back towards Christianity and back towards religion, because at least it makes some sort of sense out of the world that you're not getting out of this secularist, materialist, scientistic kind of idealized society that they're trying to shove down our throats, right?
Yeah, I feel like I'm on the way to becoming religious, and I know that sounds silly after I just said I'm not religious, but when it comes to the people who are Orthodox that I know and the people who are religious, I have way, 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 way more in common with them than the people who are atheists and live a completely different lifestyle, right? I mean,
Right.
I tell people all the time I'm a pretty socially conservative person. I bought my house when I was 22. I've been with my fiance now for 4 years, and we're getting married here soon. So that's just a lot more of what I feel brings a more prosperous and, actually, to be honest, a more free society, because people have more respect for borders, boundaries, and private property when you have a more socially conservative lifestyle, because you understand this is my collective, right? My family is my collective. I'm responsible for this. I'm responsible for my private property. When you're hedonist and you're seeking pleasure all the time, then the borders, in my mind, seem a lot more blurry, because, like, when you look at people who are polygamous,
Well, they're relative. They move.
Right. Exactly.
They're fluid. And it's
Mhm.
like, okay, like, so what was real yesterday is no longer real today. And what's real
Exactly.
today won't be real tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you don't have that in this other worldview. In the Christian worldview, it's like, these are parameters.
Mhm.
Stay on the road, and you won't end up in a ditch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and with like what we're dealing with this kind of relativist, like postmodern society, it's like, well, here are the parameters today, but
Mhm.
you better be careful because you might end up in a ditch tomorrow. It's like,
Right.
yeah, you don't know where you're going. In that chaos is not good for the human mind.
Mhm.
That is actually, I think, personally, my opinion on this is a creation, intentional creation, in order to force people out of thought and out of ritual, not ritual, but I'd say out of habit. They want to put you, like, they're trying to move you, and they're moving you. And it's like ESG, right? Like, one of the topics I talk about all the time with ESG. All right. So what I told Monica Perez was, ESG is not about the corporations. It's about you. You're already addicted to shopping through these corporations. You're already addicted to these products, to these services. So as they move the corporation, they're not moving the corporation, they're moving the public. They're moving the entire public that operates within the parameters of that corporation. If the corporation's parameters have moved 45 degrees, that the public's going to move 45 degrees. Why is that? What is the final aim? Right. And I always say I would always shorthand it. It's wealth and control and power, right? Because these are the things that drive these people. But as you look in the direction that they're pushing to, you own nothing and you'll be happy. You know, and that's that. You're going to eat the bugs, you're going to live in the pod. And it's like, no, what about those of us who won't or refuse? And I don't think they're going to kill us. I think they expect us to die off. That's what I think.
I
I
think
think they
it's
expect to outlast us.
I think it's going to be a sanctioning of everything on the individuals who choose not to comply, right? Where they're going to slowly kind of taper you away from being able to access, maybe different parts of the internet because, if the CSG score is to be implemented, then you won't be able to access this part of the internet. And then eventually it's going to be your bank account. And then eventually it's going to be you can't get a loan. Eventually you can't go through certain creditors. And then it's just going to make it so inconvenient for you that you comply. So if you look at like 2020 and 2021, what they did with the vaccines, they wanted to outsource immunity and get your compliance so that way you could be a part of this whole system. And I think they want to expand it beyond that. And to your point earlier, they kind of want to outsource your thinking to other people. And that's really what being possessed by ideology is, right? When I heard Jordan Peterson say that, I can't remember the exact thinker who said it, but I heard him say it. It was people don't have ideas have people. And that's
I
always stood with
think
me.
that
And
was Aristotle, I think,
I
or
I'm not sure, to be completely
Socrates, but that's ancient. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But it
Um,
people don't understand how much that's true. And when you talk to people, you can really understand how much, an idea has them. And the way that he laid it out is that, when you meet somebody who is like, let's say, a woke kind of leftist, okay, so they believe the gender pay gap, right? They believe in trans rights, they believe in hate speech. You kind of notice a bunch of boxes get checked off, right? A Trump supporter is going to be similar in a lot of ways, except for they're going to be kind of on the polar opposite, right? Gun rights, they want their social security, they believe in strong borders, they believe in order. They're possessed by that ideology, and even libertarians to some degree as well, right? Anarcho-capitalists, we believe in, capitalism fixes all, and whatever encapsulates anarcho-capitalist ideology. We're all kind of victim to that to some degree. But it is very interesting to notice people who are completely captured by their political ideology, and I try to separate myself from that as much as possible and try to push back, even against my own biases sometimes, which I was accused of not doing. But once again, we're all relatively guilty of some form of being possessed by our own ideas.
well, and this and that turn of phrase that traces back centuries ago, and what the belief was, and I don't know if it's wrong, but the belief was an idea was a spirit that would possess a person, and that person would act based upon the possession of that spirit, right? And so when you're talking about like transhumanism and the trans ideology, what you're witnessing is, I had this talk with a friend of mine the other day, is like a lot of Young broke it down like, all right, he would say like when a man gets over emotional, all right, he's possessed by the anima. Hello, boogie wugs. And and when a woman gets over emotional, she's possessed by the animus. All right. The anima is like the devouring mother, right? It's like have you ever noticed whenever you get overly angry or overly upset, especially when arguing with your fiance, that you're like, oh wow, I sounded like the bitch in this conversation. I'm like, I sounded like the girl here. Like, what the hell's that? All right. So Jung's idea was that inside all of us, we have this incorporation of collected idea of what we imagine the devouring mother to be, and within men, especially the men like tap into the mother. But when a woman gets really angry, really upset, what's she do? She bows up to you. She squares off with you. She's acting like a dude. You're like, bitch, am I gonna have to knock your ass out? Like, the fuck are you doing? This don't even make any sense right now. And all right, so she is embodying the tyrannical father, because that's what's in her mind, right? So this is why when you have like a single mother raising boys and those boys are causing all kinds of havoc, the mother gets abusive because that's the embodiment of the father that a woman possesses. It's the tyrant. All right. So you're looking at this situation with the woman embracing the tyrannical father, the man embracing the devouring mother. And now you have a society run on emotion. So you're experiencing day in and day out. Every man acts like a bitch. He's a beta, right?
Yeah.
And every woman wants to be the patriarch. And you're like she's like Stalin. He's like, what the fuck am I dealing? Like, it's, and people are like clown world. And yeah, it is. But what it is, it's that psychological reality manifesting itself into the world. And Jung would say you would be possessed. He looked at these characteristics within you, whether it be your ego, your shadow, or your anima, as separate entities that were within you, right? And so, like, when you're possessed by your shadow, possessed by your ego, or possessed by your anima, you're acting in a way that's antithetical to who you are. And so he saw these things as living beings within the human psyche that would possess that human psyche, control that body, and take control of the actions. If your entire society is built around emotion and men are like all possessed by the devouring mother and all women are possessed by the tyrannical father, you have a serious problem on your hand when it comes to society, which is why white women must be stopped.
Oh, that is the perfect ending for that. But no, this is it's absolutely true. And you see, and people kind of give me shit for this, but a majority of the last mass shooters were all raised by single mothers. I think there was maybe like one or two who
And
weren't.
they were on psychotropic drugs.
Right. So you could see this is just disastrous for men because our brains are actually set up so that and I'll butcher this, but somebody I listen to a lot is Rollo Tomasi, and he's a psychologist, and he's really, really good about this kind of stuff. So
I know the name, but I don't know if I've listened to him.
yeah, he runs a show on YouTube and then has written like 4 or 5 books. It's mostly based around intersexual dynamics. But what he explains is that actually our brains, men and women's brains, when it comes to raising children, we're wired completely complementary. So, one part of our brain is going to light up more than women's, and then women's are going to light up where ours doesn't. And this is because for our species to survive, it was so crucial that we have a mother and a father. And now you see, a drastic amount of men raised without fathers in the home. I mean, I was a victim of it, unfortunately. My mom and dad split up when I was 5 years old, and even my fiance, her parents split up when she was young. Um, this is just detrimental for children's development, and this is why now I'm so big on kind of socially conservative values, because it's incredibly important for children to have both parents in the home. And I feel
Absolutely.
like if we're ever going to return to some kind of form of a more free society, we need more people that understand how important it is that you just can't get divorced and, throw your kids to the side. Like, it's no longer about you when you have kids, at least in my mind, right? I'll be a
Right.
father hopefully soon, but in my mind, it's like,
Get married first.
yeah, well, obviously. That's in 2 months, almost to the day. Um, but it's no longer about you and your wife, and it's not, oh, okay, well, it just didn't work out. Well, what didn't work out? Is it that you're too lazy to figure out what an issue was, or what the hell's going on? Like, this isn't something that people should do so casually. At least this has just been the way that I've looked at it ever since I decided that, look, if I'm going to settle down and I'm going to live the values that I feel bring a more free society, then I have to embody this 100%. And you got to live it. So that's kind of where I see we have to return if we want to have this more libertarian society that everyone talks about. It's not
Right.
going to be sex work is work, right? There's a reason it's stigmatized, and guess what, I'm not against or I'm not for removing that stigma. You know, if my daughter in the future came up to me and said she's gonna be a sex worker, I'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
What
Like,
did
that's
I do wrong?
unacceptable.
That's what did you do wrong?
Exactly.
Yeah, like
Right.
where did I fuck up? Yeah.
Exactly.
Here's a number one thing I would give you advice on, and it's something I've noticed, and I think it just clicked with me a couple of days ago. Like at least the words for it, because I've been divorced twice. I'm on my third marriage. I have 5 kids from my previous 2 marriages. Beatrix and I have 0 kids together. We just have these monster dogs.
They're really
So
cute.
they're fucking awesome. But I, the difference between my mentality with my marriage now and my mentality with my marriages before is my wife is no longer disposable. And it's a harsh way of putting it. It is. But if you look at how you kind of think of like the Fight Club, like the single serving friends type deal, right? You know, it's we live in such a fast society. Everything's moving by so quickly. Nothing's stable. Everything's disposable. It has trained our minds to be able to get rid of anything on a whim, including relationships. Think about,
Especially when it's an issue.
right. Think about like the friends. Like if it's a problem, oh, well, you're slowing me down. Let me get away from this so that I can keep moving forward. Right. But is that a move forward? You have to ask yourself. Maybe it feels like it, but is it actually a move forward? So the disposability of that relationship cannot be there at all, period. And you're going to have to deal with that like on your own in silence. And do I look at it that way? Like, is there a point where it become too much of an issue where I would be like, I'm out, like, whatever, like, what am I willing to tolerate? What am I willing? And so the marriage thing is, yeah, it's a problem of culture, but it's a problem that we view people as disposable. Not my problem. Go deal with it. I don't care. Bye. Peace out. I'm on my own. I'm doing my shit because you're just fucking me up. You're slowing me down. I don't want a part of whatever the hell you're involved in. Now, there are right times to do that, right? Mm-hmm. But if you've dedicated your life to somebody, you've entered into a sacred union with someone, that's a serious responsibility you're taking. Mm-hmm. Right. And so when you take that responsibility, you have to be able to unequivocally tell yourself that that person is not disposable, that it's just not somebody that, oh, it's another infatuation that maybe lasted longer than every other infatuation. And now I'm bolting because that infatuation is over. That love, that dedication, that it has to still be there even when you don't feel like it, right? It's kind of like you and working out. Think about it that way. You work out every day. You don't feel like working out every day. There are days you wake up and you're like, I don't want to do this, but you go do it. There are days you wake up, you're like, I don't want to go to work, but you go to work. There are days you wake up and you're like, I don't want to play guitar, but you play guitar, right? It's the same thing. There are days you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, I don't want to be married. You're married. Fuck you. That's just how it is. It's not disposable. It's part of who you are now. And it is going to be the most encompassing, important part of who you are. And you have to allow it to be. You have to set your mind to, my marriage is the most important part of who I am. And that relationship with my wife is the most important part of who I am. That means you ain't going to fight. You're going to fucking fight. You're going to fight like cats and dogs. You're going to fight like you ain't ever fought before, especially in the beginning. Like the fights you're going to have are going to be fucking horrible. You're going to be like, wait, why didn't we fight like this when we were dating? If I would have known you were like this, I would have never married your ass. You're going to be thinking these things. Can't say it. Don't say that shit. Don't say it, because then you're making yourself disposable.
Right.
And so, but yeah, it's that mindset, man. You got to remember, as a man, your job is to make her feel loved, secure, and emotionally stable. And if you do those three things, you're doing it right. And that's all you got to do. Those are only three things you got to do. And it's hard as fuck, And so you just got to remember that. But it's the same. It's working out, going to work, playing guitar. It's the same shit. You're not always going to feel like it. It's not always going to feel good. It's not always going to be fun, but it's what you do. You decided you wanted to do it. You better fucking do it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's going to mean a lot to you, because I look back, like, I had that mindset with my first wife, but she didn't have that mindset with me. And so I made a lot of mistakes and made myself disposable. Right. And then my second wife, I was never super dedicated to, and it was pretty obvious, I think, now that I look back on it. But at the same time, I think I looked at my second wife more like I looked at a piece of property than I did as a wife, which was total fucked up way of looking at it.
Right.
Not to say I was abusive, but I wasn't loving and, emotionally stable and all of these things that I should have been for her, that I could have been. And so I have to look at the way I treat Beatrix and remember, like, hey, I've done it both ways, and I fucked up a lot along the path, but I do understand what my parents have. My parents are, well, still together again, but they divorced when I was very young, and then they got back together when I was, after like 3 or 4 years, and remarried. So they've been together for a long time, still 40 years at least. And so I look at that and I'm like, okay, what makes their marriage work? And I watch them. I think about them, and you're going to have to do that. My dad would never say that my mom's disposable. He would never be like, fuck that bitch. Like, never. That would never come out of his mouth. Right. And you can't even allow yourself to think those types of things, so you're going to feel like it sometimes, but you just got to, like, well, fuck it. No, whatever. Fuck the situation, not fuck her, like, whatever. And so, but that's what's important. Like, it's that mindset we've been taught through the culture that we live in, is that everything comes and goes and everything's so changing so quickly that it's not a big deal. Oh, it's just like, whatever. It's just the way things are, and it doesn't have to be the way things are. It doesn't have to be the way you approach it. Right. And you gotta, even if everything in your life moves at that rate, if you can keep that one thing stable, you have that one pillar, you at least have that one grounded foundation in your life, it will keep you stable. Right.
Yeah, well, I really like that you laid it out as this is what you do, because I heard somebody say this when it came to working out. They said you can't look at it as I go to work out. You say I pretty much am somebody who works out, right? And I never really made this connection literally until right now, where you said, okay, well, you're planning to get married. This is what you're doing, right? This is who you are now. And I don't think I've ever really been able to word it properly, but I really like the way that you word it right there, is where you have this one stable pillar in your life at all times, where and really that is the way that I look at my fiance now, is that no matter what, she's consistently there. And I am blessed beyond words with how stable and sane she is. I know this sounds silly, but as a dude in
Wait
the
till
age of
menopause.
as a dude in the age of Tinder, and where everybody can go out and find a girlfriend swiping right. And especially, and I'm going to sound conceited here, but I'm okay with that. I'm a good looking dude, right? I mean, I've worked my ass off
I'd
to get
fuck
where
you.
I am now. Thanks. Well, yeah. I mean, if I were a chick, I'd fuck me too. But Tommy, me casa su casa, I promise.
Wrap a flag around your head and fuck you for glory.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I love it. I do have a nice ass too, so at least you got something to look at.
There you go.
Fuck, I don't even remember where I was going with that. But regardless, I'm very, very blessed to have my fiance in my life, and she is very, very stable. And I feel, as a guy who went through the Tinder age essentially, and now it's even different from when I was kind of out dating,
Right.
5 to 10 years ago. I realize how hard it is to find somebody that's like her, who's able to handle stress, and who, if I ever needed anything, would be dependable and would be able to be there for me. And when it comes to telling other men what to look for, at least if in my mind, you got to find somebody that's stable and reliable. And that sounds so well, no shit, but I think people are really surprised how many people just aren't stable and reliable. And I think that's kind of the way you have to be successful in a relationship. And this has been the longest relationship I've ever been in. And to go to another point that you made earlier about looking at one of your ex-wives as like property, I looked at one of my last relationships, and it ended relatively amicably, but um I also realized where I failed because I wasn't the person who she would have necessarily deserved, right? Like if I was that way towards my fiance now, then I would feel the same way, right? Like I wasn't
Mm.
the person that she deserved. Like I didn't realize that it was time to say it's time for me to walk away and us go do something else because I'm not somebody that's worthy of being, there for you. So that was something that I had to look critically at in myself, and obviously continue to look at moving forward.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's absolutely correct the way that you're viewing it. And
Mhm.
you know, as I've been going through this process with Orthodox Christianity, something struck me the other day, and I was kind of reflecting on it, trying to process it in my head. And it's like, because like one of the things that is talked about a lot, not necessarily by my priest but within the Orthodox circles, it's the controlling of the passions, right? And I'm like, so what are you doing when you're controlling your passions? Like what actually are you doing? Well, you're putting off any kind of benefit, right? Like let's just say I'm married and I meet a chick like at a truck stop, a lot lizard, let's say, and she's badass. And I know I can do what I want to do and get away with it and everything's fine. Right. But it's like, what benefit would I get from doing that? Well, I would get this initial like um immediate gratification out of that situation. And then what benefit would I get for putting it off? Well, I would be able to look at my wife when I got home with no guilt and no shame, right? Whether she knew or not, there I would know, right? And so when you're looking at a lot of what's going on, and you're thinking high time preference versus low time preference, these types of deals, really what when you're examining the high versus the low time preferences, you're examining a Christian point of view of, do I want that benefit now, right? Or do I want the benefit that will come later from not taking part in that activity at this moment? And so this is something that our culture has such a hard time with. And this is it's like it feels like it's been prepped for this, and that the transhumanism is to fill that immediate gratification.
Right.
But as somebody who's worked out, played in a band, I mean, you got what, 10 guitars I can see, and
15 in this room, I think.
15. Okay. And you play in a pretty popular band, I would guess. I mean, I like them. I like you a lot. I think your music's really good. And so, and you're playing decent shows. You're opening up for some pretty well-known acts. Um, you're making progress in your life. That didn't come fast. That didn't come easy, right? That was a lot of hard work. You had, as the Beatles would say, you had blisters on your fingers, right? And and you did this and you worked hard, and I've seen pictures of you before you started working out and after you started working out. You look like 10 years younger. Like really, you do. You look a lot younger now than you did before from getting healthy. And I'm like, that did not come easy, right? So you've been teaching yourself this process of delaying your gratification. What the problem is the majority of the culture doesn't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they do get it, they don't live by it, right? They're like, I know it, but my actions don't show it, right? And so you'll see this, and so that's what, when I look at what I've been learning with Christianity, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at, oh, this is why this works and this doesn't work. This is why this works and this doesn't work. And I can go through and I can visualize all these different things and say, I get it. Light bulb, like I get the way that the order of the universe is in concert in such a way that delaying gratification is a better route than immediate gratification. Because if you're delaying gratification, you're usually acting in a way that is not harmful, right? And that most things that are immediately gratifying are harmful, right? Whether it's drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, a lot of the things I do, other than the drugs, I don't do the drugs, but they do me. But sorry, Manson, I won't steal any more of your lyrics. But it's this, you teach yourself to prolong that gratification, right? So like let's say I want to quit smoking, right? I've been smoking for over 20 years. It's going to be very hard for me to quit smoking. So what would be the best way for me to do it? I would prolong the gratification. I would say, all right now I'm smoking one cigarette every hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever. I really don't have a system down. But so tomorrow I'm going to wait 3 hours. The day after that, I'm going to wait 4. The day after that, I'm going to wait 5. Right. And so I move out that I make that gratification more prolonged. Before long, I stop smoking. All right. So that's good for my health. Whereas most people that are acting in forms of delayed gratification, whether it's working out or playing guitar, they're doing something that is more productive and better for them than having a cigarette or having a beer or taking a bump of cocaine or a hit of acid or whatever. And a lot of people will like try to tell you that, oh, well, you can take mushrooms and you get to know God that way. Well, what are we talking about? Talking about instant gratification.
Right.
Like, so you're not willing to walk the road and do the hard shit that you got to do to get there. You just want to pop something in your face and be right there, right? That's probably not healthy. You're probably not going to get where you want to be. You might meet something, but it's probably not going to be what you want to meet. You know what I'm saying? And so that's something I've been really like working with in my head is that not even so much delayed gratification, it's it's patience. Mm-hmm. Really for me, it's just patience. Right. It's like if I get a new idea in my head or a new subject, I want to learn it all as fast as possible. And for a month, I will be pumping as much information into my brain as I could fit in there.
Right.
And I've come to realize like that's not the healthy way to approach it, right? The healthy way to approach it, because then you become that psycho libertarian that's just like, no, you're wrong. Rothbard said blah 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 blah. Okay, you read every book Rothbard wrote in a month. Do you know anything else? Do you have any life experience? No, you don't need life experience. Rothbard said blah blah blah. It's like, dude, shut up. I don't want to talk to you. Like you don't make any sense to me, you know? And so you become that if all you do is just feed yourself all that information all at one time, because that's all you want to talk about, because that's the only thing you're being put in your head. All that being said, that is the transhumanist agenda. It's being that short-term gratification, that immediate gratification to just download all the information all at one time. And you've done none of the work. You get none of the appreciation of knowing it. You just know it. And you sound like one of these little prick fucking assholes that think they know everything at 17 years old because they read one book. And it's like, all right, you read one book, dude. Have you ever fucking grown a tomato? Like anything? Have you ever done anything? Like, what have you done other than sit in mama's basement, jerk off, and read a book?
Yeah.
You know? And so I think it's so important that we draw the distinction between the Christian mindset and the modern day secularized mindset, is that delayed gratification and that immediate gratification, but it's healthy versus unhealthy. There's like something healthy about that Christian mindset that caused it to exist for as long as it has existed.
Right. Well, it was beneficial to our species because, like you said, you're kind of delaying the gratification, which is basically where you're going to put off um, the hedonistic pleasure today to have a greater tomorrow, right? One day you're going to be repaid with meeting God in heaven or whatever your belief is surrounding that. When it comes to diet, I have a whole bunch of, they're called Buckeye brownies downstairs, right? They're like a half a pound brownie and they look absolutely fantastic. And I've had like a half of one, right? They're out of this world. I could go down there and I could eat like 3 pounds of brownie, absolutely no issue, right? I mean, I got a big fucking appetite. But guess what? If I do that, I'm gonna get fat, right? I'm gonna gain the 70 pounds that I lost. That took me 3 years to lose. And it's not like this was just 3 years of slow, continued weight loss. This was 3 years of suffering and binging and finding out that certain diets didn't work for me and certain things didn't work for me and missing workouts, having nights of bad sleep. It was a lot, right? There were plenty of hiccups and slips along the way, and I'll have plenty more, right? Um, in fact, this year I was planning to get super shredded, but then guess what? Well, we went on a bunch of vacations and I had job interviews and stuff like that that caused me to be off the plan. Well, guess what? That's okay because the way that I've always looked at it is you're 1 meal off the plan and you're 1 meal back on. So, long-winded way to say that essentially delaying gratification is, basically the most prosperous way forward because like I said, I could go down and eat all these brownies, but then I'll get fat. I could tell my work to go fuck off and go down to Florida and sit on the beach and drink margaritas, but then I'd be broken out of a job, right? The reason why I go to work every day is so that way I can maintain the roof and the guitars and all the stuff that I really enjoy doing. That's so crucial to our development. And it's why I feel like I have a lot more of a close relationship with people who tend to be a little bit more socially conservative and religious than people who aren't. And the reason why I sent you that clip of Dime talking about, the most serene, sexy sound in the moonlight of this little squeak or twerk or whatever, is because in my mind, when I listened to that right before we hopped on this call, to me, that is a refutation of globalism. He is literally speaking to the power of a specific individual thing that nobody else can mimic, that the computer and these keys right in front of me can't mimic. When I pick up that guitar and bend a note, I'll never sound like Dime. Jay, the other guitar player in A Common Ground, will never sound like me, and that's okay. But that's the beauty of it, and that's kind of like what you said earlier. Why you listen to older music is because you listen to the Wind Cries Mary from God knows what, 1968.
Mm.
You can hear all the imperfections on that record, but it's so memorable because of that, right? And like we were talking about
Well,
some of the
people
grunge
listen to
singers.
vinyl, a lot of people would rather listen to vinyl,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. you listen to Phil Anselmo and the way that he sings. I'll never forget listening to him here, or him sing Wood, and it just had this really unique vibe to it. And if you would have said, "Hey, Phil Anselmo's singing grunge," you'd be like, "Okay, well, that's not like his particular forte." But it just gave it this whole new sound because he has that deep, haunting voice that,
Mm,
like you said, is like almost a beat off or like on like the downbeat or something with
yeah.
some stuff, and it just creates this real interesting sound.
But see, this is like the whole thing. Like what we're talking about is like the entire thing. I don't know if people are following what we're doing here, but like this is the entire problem that we're laying out in front of you. And you put it perfectly. It's humanity, right? What's Dime talking about in that video? He's not talking about only uniqueness. He's talking about humanity. We're sloppy. We make mistakes. We trip, we fall, but we get back up. We love each other, and we just keep playing that rhythm, right? All through life, we're playing that rhythm, and we might stumble and hit an extra note and fucking whatever, but we're still playing that rhythm, and we're going to get right back into the groove, right? And that's the way you don't, like, if you meet a person that's perfect, what's your first thought? I don't trust that motherfucker.
Right.
Like, what are they hiding? Like, why are they acting like that? That's not how people act. Like that's just the way your mind is set, because you're wired to recognize that humanity is flawed and accept these flaws. And if you see something that is way too polished, you're like, that fucking
Something's up.
car salesman's trying to get me, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, yeah. And that's how like people like me catch con men, right? Like we don't get caught by con men because it's like, dude, I got way more street smarts than I do book smarts.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of people. People don't talk to me the way you're talking to me. Like I'm not, not within 5 minutes of knowing me. Nah, I'm not interested. Whatever you're selling, I don't want it. And that's the way that we're wired. But there are people that will fall for the fucking Algerian fucking prince fucking scams, right? And the problem is that it's a lot more people than we'd like to admit. And that's what we're dealing with. And so people like you and I, we're like, how do we deal with this? Well, build a support system around us that's not willing. Yeah, it's like I made a statement earlier, and I don't know if people didn't want to hear it or they didn't like it or whatever, but I was like, hey, a lot of these people that are talking tough and acting like they're going to be able to resist, they're going to give in. They've never had to suffer
Right.
ever. They've never wanted for anything, right? Like, even if you have had the most comfortable life in the world, let's just say, and you grew up in a wealthy family, you've at least put yourself through some training, some strenuous exercise to build mental fortitude to be like, yeah, I don't have to give in to you because I know I'll get through this pain. The pain's only temporary. I'll get to the other side. I've had to go hungry, right? Like, okay, like take away my fucking electricity. Like people in Italy right now aren't using lights because they can't afford the electric bills. So they're using candles. They're going out in front of the parliament and they're burning their electric bills because it's so out of control, right? People in California are asked to shed 40% of their electricity. They're not even allowed to charge up the electric cars that they have to have because gas is damn near illegal in the state. And it's like, okay, like what are these people going to do? These people are going to, you're going to see, I don't know if it's going to be this winter or next winter, but there's going to be a lot of starvation. There's going to be a lot of death. It's going to happen because they're cutting out all the power, all the electricity, everything we know as far as how to survive and how to operate. It's all being cut out, and they're doing it. They're doing it fast. California has a plan to not sell any gas cars by 2035. That's only 13 years, man. That's not very long. Like, that shit flies. You know, U.S. government saying they want 50% of the cars on the road in the United States in 8 years, 2030, to be electric. Right now, it's 6%.
I'm glad you know that, because I did a whole podcast. If people want to look it up, it would be episode number 67, and it was on green energy and efficiency. And I'll try to keep it relatively brief with how I lay this out. But you're correct that only 6% of the market is, and that's like the most optimistic measurements. And that measurement, I believe, is actually from like a year or two ago. So
Okay.
before that, it was only like 1 to 3% of the whole market.
Yeah.
So is it going up? Yes. But
Is
it
it
gonna be
going up the
significant?
way they want it to?
No, you have
No, they
8
have to
years.
twist your arm to do this.
Right. You have 8 years to get vehicles from, you have 8 years to essentially completely overhaul the entire automotive industry, which, let's be honest, I've been in there for 10 years. My dad's been in it for 40 years. Not going to happen.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah,
but
you
you know,
motherfuckers aren't stubborn or anything.
yeah, right. But to go to the theme of kind of what we've been talking about, you'll own nothing and be happy. We've really created this kind of 5-year throwaway mentality where people no longer maintain vehicles, right? And people will just lease a vehicle for 3 years and then on to the next one. Lease it,
Mm.
get rid of it. Lease it, get rid of it. That's what everybody does now. And there's no longer pride in, this is my vehicle. It's, they are essentially 5-year, now 3-year throwaways where people just get these vehicles and they get rid of them. As soon as the warranty runs out, they get rid of them. But this is also kind of a function of our economy. We honestly have a debt-based economy with low interest rates where people don't see their savings grow. So it's like, okay, well, what the hell? It fuels kind of, debt-based consumption where people don't, as we've said, delay gratification. We just continually spend more and more and more to have more and more and more. And then you just get rid of it whenever it's done rather than save for a rainy day. And then when the engine starts ticking in your 2004 Saturn, you pay to get it fixed. Well, we don't do that anymore. Now we just send it to the junkyard. There still are a few people that do that, but it's much, much less than it is, than it used to be. And even like now, I don't see a lot of those or vehicles still running around anymore, even compared to like 5 years ago. So it's sad, but once again, nobody's gonna be able to afford to buy some of these electric vehicles that they're pushing because GM released the Chevy Volt and the Cadillac ELR, which were fully electric vehicles back in, I want to say 2013 or 2015. They were
Somewhere
literally
around
built
there.
on the platform of a Chevrolet Cruze, right? That is GM's cheapest vehicle. And so you're literally going to pay 60 grand for a fully electric vehicle that's built on the platform of a $18,000 vehicle,
Right.
and you wonder why nobody wants to buy the damn things. But I completely got off track. So in order for solar panels to work, right, they're about, if I remember correctly, if you have this enormous cell that would store the energy from the solar panels for 12 hours, they're about, I think, at very most optimistic, clear weather conditions, 80% reliable. Right now, all the technologies that we use now to keep our power grid
Well, and they
on.
only last about 10 years too. So
Okay, yeah,
all that money that you're spending to do all this, you have to do it again in 10 years.
Right. So our power grid right now is like 99.4% reliable. So you would exponentially have more rolling brownouts, blackouts, and conditions where you would have no power if we were to go over to solar. And once again, this is in ideal conditions, literally about a 20% drop in reliability in ideal conditions. So if you want to reduce human flourishing, then by all means get rid of all gas-powered vehicles and all gas-powered technologies. But if you're for human flourishing, then honestly, fossil fuels and the energy that we have now is the most reliable way to do things. And if you look at climate deaths, this is a no-brainer. People aren't dying from the climate anymore. It's like less than 1,000 per year.
Yeah, it's called sudden adult death syndrome. It's
When did that come? What could have possibly changed the last couple of years?
And all you've seen all these like teenage athletes dying of heart attacks on the the sport field. I mean, that climate's killing these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to do something about
It's
it.
reaching out. It's like reaching out and just smacking them in the face, knocking them over.
We got to fund a think tank
Suddenly,
and give the government money.
it wasn't the ice age that was coming in the 70s or the global warming that they swore about in the 90s. It was the climate change of the 2000s.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're about overdue for a shift in policy there because they've been beating the climate change drum now for about 20 years. So
yeah, they're gonna have to change the. I think that's why they're pushing so hard this, because it's like we either get these people to believe this shit or we're gonna have to change wording again, and we're running out of fucking adjectives.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know what they would pivot to. When it comes to like climate lockdowns and stuff like that, man, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like
there's not going to be climate lockdowns. They're going to be voluntary. They're going to be like the vaccine, right? What they're going to do is they're going to put you in a position to where you can't afford not to be locked down.
Yeah,
you can't afford to leave the house. Yeah. You can't charge your electric vehicle because you can't afford the electricity it would cost to charge your electric vehicle. So you are locked down by proxy, right?
Right. It was like what I was saying with ESG scores earlier. It's going to be sanctioned.
Well, you can leave the house. You just can't drive anywhere.
Exactly.
So what? You're limited to what, a 4 or 5 block radius, like, which is what people would probably tolerate. But yeah, ESG. It's all about getting you to voluntarily interact with it by threat, right? And that's what they're doing. They're threatening. It's the same thing. With ESG, they threaten to cut off your bank account. With charging your your electric vehicle, they're threatening to charge you more than you make in a year, right? I've heard there was I think I heard Glenn Beck talking about this, where he said that there was some lady that owns a coffee shop who suffered drastically during COVID. And just over the last 2 months, her electric bill total for 2 months is $10,000. It's like, okay, now I think this was in another country, but this is like the type of shit you can look forward to, right? And this is why people in Italy are using candles and not light bulbs. It's like there are things happening all around the world that are being affected by this. And if you don't think it's going to affect you, you better hold on tight, buddy, because you have no idea. And if you are weak, you're going to be asking for that immediate gratification, and you're going to buy right into that transhumanism bullshit that they're trying to sell you. And I mean, that's why I wanted to talk about all this stuff. I think all this stuff's very important, and I think it all ties in together. I mean, I think we're really like having a meta conversation here.
Yeah, no, for real. And that's why I really wanted you to listen to that clip from Dime, because like I said, I truly believe that was a refutation of globalism and this idea that you could be whatever,
Dime Kaczynski.
That's gonna have to be a shirt. We'll have to hit up top and tell him you should put that on a shirt.
The Dime Kaczynski shirt, dude. I will rock the fuck out of a Dime Kaczynski shirt.
I will wear it everywhere.
The metal and its future.
Yeah, man, it really is kind of just that slide of the fretboard, right, that you hear in between each note. That is humanity.
Industrial society and its metal. I don't know. We're gonna have to work on that. We're good.
Yeah. Something with like the black tooth grin or something like that. The black. I don't know. You'd be able to come up with a better name than me. I'm not unfortunately as well read on Kaczynski as I probably should be. Yeah, man.
It's free, dude. Just download it. It won't take you an hour to read the whole fucking Industrial Society and Its Future. Take you about an hour.
Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe maybe I'll do that tomorrow on the way. No, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that on the way to camping with it.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Be sitting around the fire.
Wait till next week. You get a lunch break.
Yeah. Well,
over 2 days on your lunch break, you can read it. Like, no problem.
Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to look into that. Yeah, dude, the humanity of things should never be stripped away from things. And I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but Fear Factory, I want to say it was 2 albums ago, they literally did all electronic drums. And like the songs are good, but they're just the most dry thing in the world. Like the digital drums just take every last little freaking ounce of soul out of those. It's awful.
Mm.
Honestly, I hate it. I remember when I first heard it, I'm like, I like the song, but like just these electronic drums just are awful.
It's why I didn't like early ministry.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because you know, early ministry was very kind of like that 80s like electronic sound. It wasn't
Yeah.
industrial metal. It was that 80s electronic sound. It was just kind of like, like my wife likes this band called Sisters of Mercy. They're fine. Like I don't have an issue. Like vocally, they're really good. I don't like the music though, because it's all electronic. It was all that was what I always had issues with when it came to like old school rap too. Like, you tell nobody was playing an instrument, you know,
Yeah.
that it was just all samples and done electronically. And it was like that this doesn't even sound right. It's just these noises that they put together. Like there was no soul to it, you know. All my friends were listening to NWA. I was listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan. You
Mhm.
know, it's like, okay, like whatever. Y'all can't top this guy. Like whatever you do, you know. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, no, you're completely right about that. There's this like it's like this lack of soul. And but that is so much of what our culture is. It's like lacks soul. There's no real like there's no nothing well there's nothing real behind it. It's just emotive. And emotions aren't real. Emotions are great. Everybody feels them, and they're a signal as to what's going on around you.
Mhm.
But that's not what makes you move, right? Or not what makes a person move that has any soul to them,
Mhm.
right? So that I don't know. I maybe I need to work on that a little bit, but that's I feel like the overly emotional is so shallow that and the soul is so deep it doesn't go together. There has to be a way to distinguish it. Maybe you can do better than me on that.
Well, it's kind of like we've been highlighting all throughout this conversation, the delaying of gratification rather than just instantly emoting and tweeting about something. Why not stop, take the time, read it? Because I've been doing a lot of reading on like the connection between Miles Guo and Steve Bannon, which is actually really, really interesting. But when I had put up a article today on Twitter talking about the raids, because Steve Bannon claimed that 35 Trump allies had their houses raided. Well, I looked into it and there was zero evidence that that actually happened, other than the Mar-a-Lago raid and MTG having her house raided and Mike Lindell having his phone stolen, which are all absolutely abysmal. There was no evidence for anything that he said.
There was
And
a there was a story that came out about 40 subpoenas
40
and
subpoenas, that's what it
so
was.
maybe that's what he was talking about. You know, like that whole everything today is so over exaggerated. I don't take anybody literally. It's like really
You're
hard.
better
It's like,
off.
yeah, it's kind of like, all right, like maybe that's what he's talking about. Like
That's kind of what I thought.
but people like that, like honestly, and this might sound like an insult to my wife, but I don't mean it that way. She knows she's dramatic, but these people are like the dudes nowadays, men nowadays are as dramatic as my wife. And it's like, all right. You know, she gets a little cut on her finger. She thinks she's going to bleed to death. And she's, give me a band aid. You know, like, and that's what I see all around me all the time. And I'm like, okay. I get a little cut on my finger. I'm like, fuck, that hurt. Okay. Get back to work. You know, like it's just, I mean, you know, you're a mechanic. I'm sure you bust the shit out of your knuckles several times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's probably plenty of scars there for
Yeah. I
everybody to
mean,
see. But I can't tell you how many times I have pictures of it where I wear gloves sometimes at work and I'll be turning on something and I'll literally cut my hand and keep going. And then I'll pull my hand out to realize that, there's blood all in the glove. And
yeah,
that
like
saves right
or
there.
or
Kind of
you'll or
happened.
you'll or you'll work all day, you'll eat dinner, you'll go take a shower, and suddenly something stings, and you're like, "What the fuck is that?" You know, like, well, at some point in the day, I cut myself.
Mhm.
Oh shit, and you didn't even notice because you were just so busy, fucking whatever you're doing. Your mind is so fun, and we don't have the benefit of giving these talking heads, whoever they are, the opportunity or uh the benefit of the doubt that they're being honest. We just have to understand that Taylor Lorenz is an over dramatic fucking psycho, and so is Steve Bannon. And okay, that's our system, that's our culture, that's everybody, you know, that's your drag queen story hour reader and the guy that's protesting them. They're all fucking drama queens. And I don't know how to fucking tell one from the other. I don't like the whole trans ideology being pushed down kids' throats. I don't like the whole drag queens being pushed down kids' throats. I don't call it. A lot of people will say, well, it seems like a moral panic. I'm like, no, it's not a moral panic because there's real damage that can be done to these children if these acts are followed through on. Right. So that's not a moral panic. The last thing you want to do is victimize children in
Right.
order to, preserve an ideology.
Mhm.
At the same time, when some dude's going, didn't your mom have a uterus? It's like, yes, dude, you're a fucking retard. Stop screaming at me. Shut up. Go away. Right? It's just, okay, fine. There are retards everywhere and they're all around us. And I don't know what to do about that. All I know to do is to keep talking about the things I talk about and say, hey, look, these are real problems. These are things you're going to have to deal with. How are you going to deal with it? Because that's all we can do. And I can't worry too much about, you know, Bojangles and fucking, Olivia Newton-John. I just don't give a shit.
Yeah, I mean, I almost moved to Florida a couple months ago, but honestly, I'm grateful that I didn't because in Pennsylvania, I do have my whole family here. But my dad put it to me this way, and I'm sure you probably feel this way about your dad, but like they just have this knowledge, right? Like anytime I have an issue, I can ask my dad about anything, and I feel like he'll like 90% of the time have an answer that may not be correct, but it's always useful. So when I kind of broached this topic with him, he's like, it would have killed me if you would have moved. But he said, you also have to think that, if my toilet breaks, we call a plumber, he's here the next day. If there's an issue with the AC, the guy's here the next day. My dad knows somebody for everything, and because I'm his son, I get to benefit from that because my dad worked hard, his dad worked very hard, and then his dad worked very hard, and they were reputable business people. I mean, I remember when I went to my grandfather's funeral, there was a line around the fucking building for the people who were coming in to see him.
Right.
And honestly, that would be the kind of legacy I like to leave behind. It sounds arrogant, but I know my dad's going to be the same way because he's such a phenomenal person.
No,
And
it's not arrogant, dude. You're a Matovcik. You have a lineage to carry on, and that's the way you should look at it.
Mhm.
Period. Like, who gives a fuck what other people think? Like, your job is like, I heard this. Andrew Tate said this on Patrick Beck David's fucking podcast. He's like, a son's job is to carry on his dad's legacy, right? They won't remember your dad if you don't do your job well.
Right.
So your job is to make sure they remember your dad. So do your job well because fuck everybody else.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, yeah, no, that generation, whether it's our fathers, our grandfathers, the people that we've kind of acquired wisdom from, they had a stoicism about them. And it was a stoicism without the philosophy of stoicism, right?
It was natural.
I would give anybody the advice that's living today, that's dealing with the bullshit going on around us, that if you want a better perspective on life, you go read Thomas Aurelius' Meditations. You read that book. That was his journal for himself. And so he gets really personal and really deep, but at the same time, it gives you an insight as to how he viewed the world. And if you can start incorporating that mindset into yourself, it's going to make you a more peaceful person, a more stoic person. It's going to make you a better man. And so I would definitely suggest go read Meditations by Thomas Aurelius. Like, and I think my buddy Coop told me about that book. He's like, you need to check this book out. I was like, all right, I'll read it. I got it on audiobook when I was driving. I would listen to it. And I was like, I love this. He had this one thing that stuck out in my head. It was like it seemed profound to me at the time. I don't know why, but it make sense. He's like, hey man, like, are you going to get mad at a bear acting like a bear? Like, no, you're not. So why are you going to get mad at politicians acting like politicians? Why are you going to get mad at a criminal acting like a criminal? Why are you going to get mad at this? Don't let these people control your fucking emotions. Don't give them that control. They're not thinking about you. Why are you thinking about them so much? And it's like, oh shit. All right. Yeah. Like, it was that kind of like idea that I was like, fuck. Yeah. I need to kind of pay attention to what's going on around me, like my life as well. I can't just, and I still get caught up, and Beatrix will be like, hey, motherfucker, you ain't paying attention. I'll be like, oh shit. All right. Not bad. So then I'll be making up for like weeks on end, like, oh, I'm sorry, baby. Let me kiss your ass, until you forget about it. And then I can go fuck up again.
Now, like, I'll definitely check that book out because, that I could see why that line stood out. I often say, call a spade, and I was told that I shouldn't say that on stage because that's apparently an old racist soliloquy or whatever the saying is. Anyways,
So no, you're supposed to follow that up with "fuck you."
Unfortunately, I don't have that many mean bones in my body. But, it's that story of the what is it, the scorpion and the frog or whatever going across the river,
Yep.
and halfway
The scorpion
through,
wants to ride. Yep.
the scorpion stings the frog. He said it's because
Or
it's
like
nature.
that poem that Donald Trump like to tell about the lady who fucking nursed a snake back to health. Yeah, I don't know if you know that one, but he's basically it was like this lady, like, she finds this snake freezing in the snow. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen a snake when it's really cold. They stiffen up. They turn to stone basically. And you got to heat them up. You got to warm them up. I had snakes as pets, and we had a situation where our electricity went out one time and my snakes got really cold. So what I did is they basically, you would think they were dead. They're hibernating basically. They just, because they're cold blooded, they just lower their body temperature, their heartbeat, and everything just almost comes to a standstill. And it's like they're dead. And then you wrap them up in a blanket and you get them all nice and warm and they start moving around. Right. So this lady finds this snake out in the snow. And the snake's like, hey, can you help me? I'm pretty fucked here. I'm going to die if I don't get into the warmth. The lady's like, you're going to fucking bite me. He's like, no, I'm not going to bite you. She looked at the snake. It was a really beautiful snake. So she's like, all right, promise me you won't bite me. And he's like, yeah, I promise I won't bite you. She takes the snake inside. She warms him up. She nurses him to health. They spend a few weeks together. And all of a sudden that snake bites her. She said, I did all this for you. Why'd you bite me? She's like, bitch, you know I was a snake.
Yeah, it's in its nature. And I think that's something that libertarians and myself 110% included, when politicians do politician shit, quit, quit running to the outrage. Don't let anybody be your outrage broker and get you all
Yeah.
worked up. Just realize, hey, this is politics as
Yeah,
usual. And like I said,
you
I'm
just got to
totally
kind of tell
guilty.
yourself war criminals are going to war criminal. Globalists are going to globalist. That's what they're going to do, man. They're all moving in a specific direction. You got to kind of like let that go. You can't be bitter about it. You can't dwell on it. You can't let it take over your life because there are big problems going on. There's big issues happening all around us every fucking day. And we got to fucking figure out a way to solidify ourselves. And
Right.
you might get a pat in the back, but that's that immediate gratification. You go on Twitter and you say some witty shit that gets all your friends high-fiving you. But what the fuck are you doing? Like, what does that mean? Notice I haven't tried to get back on Twitter. Like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Fuck, I need to be on Twitter for. I know my friends. I can get a hold of my friends. I can get in touch with you if I need to get in touch with you. I can get in touch with Pete if I need to get. The fuck I need Twitter for, right? Like, what the fuck? It was just a place to go fucking dunk on people I had fucking thought were stupid. Well, that was immediate gratification. What good is that doing me?
Mm-hmm.
If I need immediate gratification that bad, I can just sit at home and get drunk. I don't have to fucking go on Twitter and run my mouth. Like, all right, now I'm just putting a target on my back. Saw a fucking article today, PJ Media put out fucking Facebook feeding FBI the private direct messages of people talking about the election being stolen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you think they took Mike Lindell's phone for? They're coming after all of you motherfuckers that have been talking about this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you're putting a target on your back by playing their game. Quit playing their game. Fuck their game. They want you to be moving in the direction of the transhumanism fucking agenda. If you are engaged in their game of immediate gratification, you are moving in the direction they want you to move. Stop doing what they want you to do.
You accepted their rules, and all you got to do is just continue to play the game, man.
Yep. If you just stop playing their fucking game. I deleted my Facebook. I don't have a Twitter. I have my Discord. I'm on Signal, Telegram. Like, if you want to find me, you can find me, but I'm not playing their fucking game anymore. I'm like, all right, I'm done with them. I'm doing my own shit. I got my own shit to worry about. I don't need to worry about these people.
Yeah. Well,
I'll
I'm
do my
grateful.
I'll do my podcast and I'll talk about like what I know is going on, what I see that people need to be warned about, but I'm not going to sit here and fucking dwell over it. I'm like, I'm not reading news stories like 8 hours a day like I was at one time. Like, I'm just not doing that. I'm like, nah, whatever. I'm not listening to podcasts all day long, like just blasting all this fucking rancid nonsense into my brain that I'm just like, okay, I feel horrible. I'd rather go listen to Dostoevsky or a good novel than and fucking enjoy what I'm listening to than get all worked up and pissed off. It's just not doing me any good. I know enough about what's going on. I get emails from the right news sources and the right people to understand what I need to be doing. And I can continue my podcast. I continue talking to interesting people, and I don't have to be completely emotionally invested in it at the same time.
Yeah. And that's definitely a note that I think everybody could take. And Pete wrote a Substack recently that I shared, and it seemed like it got a decent bit of traction. I hope it did because it was very, very good. I wish I could remember what it was called off the top of my head, but
It
I,
was the positive one, right? Like the one he
yeah,
just
yeah, it
wrote
was
like
basically
it
just
was like 2 days ago he wrote it.
right. It was
Yep.
basically just kind of telling people to deload. And somebody had put a tweet out and said, I wish I would never got introduced into this libertarianism stuff. And I quote tweeted it. And I like this guy, don't get me wrong, but I said, is it libertarianism or is it you? Because the way that I look at this is that when it comes to like exercise, right? Fatigue accumulates. So as you continue to do more and more work physically and continue to beat the living shit out of your body to get stronger and stronger, eventually, if you don't deload or do something to kind of mitigate that damage, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get injured. So I think there's a mental manifestation of that when you just continually dive and beat on the topics that are political or something that's going to be taxing on your brain. If you don't take a break from that, take a breather, hey, let's put the phones down and go take the dog for a walk outside, or just go enjoy this meal with my wife or whoever, eventually you're going to cause yourself some damage. So it's huge to just, as much as you can, and whenever you feel yourself kind of getting worn and beat up, go take a deload, take a break, get off Twitter for a little bit, put the phone down. I can use this advice as much as anybody else, but take a deload, relax, cool, everything's going to be good.
But you gotta also look at things this way. People worship. They worship something. There was a reason that early Christianity wasn't called Christianity. You know what they called it, right? The way. Because it was a lifestyle. So when somebody dives into something like libertarianism and they feel like they're getting fed truth that they've never discovered before and they've never uncovered, that becomes their life. That becomes their way of life. David Nolan, when founding libertarianism, he was quoted, there's an article, you could go find it, where he's quoted as saying that libertarianism at its core is evangelical. That's religious language, right? The way that libertarianism is the same with conservatism, it's the same with progressivism. It's packaged as a religion, right? And this is why politics or pop culture, like, it's all been packaged as a religion and pushed as a religion. It's become a religion, right? And so when you have your dogma, libertarianism, as your primary dogma, that's your primary identifier, that's the way you identify your life, that's what you are, it's who you are. I'm a libertarian. You hear it all the time, right? That's how these people are identifying. A lot of these people don't have anything else. So that's dangerous.
Absolutely.
Because they don't have anything above and beyond that idea. And so that idea becomes an ideology. That ideology becomes a dogma. That dogma becomes a religion that they're worshiping in the altar of. So why my buddy Adam Patrick used to say libertarian is like Christianity without Christ, right? And Mark Claire, whenever I would talk to Mark, I did a conversation with Mark where Mark was like, yeah, Ron Paul was like Jesus to me. Like, we talked about these things, like this is a real thing. This is, the ideas don't have people. Ideas are spirits that overtake you. They overtake you and they move you and they possess you and cause you to move in specific directions, right? How do you guard against that? You have to have something that is grounded, a pillar that is more important than that idea, something that is better than that idea. A lot of these people don't have anything better. That's what's dangerous about these ideologies. So it's dangerous about progressivism, right? They don't have anything better. These people, that's all they got. Their emotions. They don't know any other way of functioning in the world. Makes them dangerous. You see what I'm saying? So without that pillar, without that foundation that they're built upon, then they start substituting these ideas as a foundation and they build themselves off of that idea. And so what that kid was saying when he said, I wish I would have never found libertarianism, is my life was more stable before I was possessed by this idea.
Right. He built his whole life around libertarianism, and it's incomplete. That's been the post-libertarian critique, and I completely agree. But that's why I don't marry this ideology and say that it's my end-all be-all. Right? I mean, I'm a musician. I'm going to be a husband soon. I'm an athlete. I do so much more than just talk about politics.
Well, that's why it was like, that's why Jeff Dice says being a libertarian is the least least interesting thing about Kyle.
That was Stowe, but yeah, if
Oh,
that was
was it
Jeff Dice,
though?
yeah, if it was Jeff
Oh,
Dice, I'd be
I'm
a little
sorry.
stoked.
I'm sorry.
No, that's
My
okay.
bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that's why he said that, because it was like, yeah, like you are more than just these ideas. There's so much more going. That's why you and I are friends. You know, that's why we chat about, I mean, like we don't talk about politics at all when you and I are talking. Like
No,
that's
I don't
just
think we
like,
ever do.
yeah, we never tell. We're usually texting about music and, you know, hey, did you see the, you know, latest this, latest that, you know, like we're just bullshitting. Like it's just friends talking. That's how you build relation. That's where relationships are built, though. Like a lot of these influences or these relationships that are built on the ideas of an ideology, like they're frail. Like they're not real. Like you and I have a lot in common. We talk all the time about all kinds of stuff, and it never comes down to what the libertarian view is, blah, 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 blah. Well, you're not a real libertarian. You know, it's like, oh, who gives a fuck, man? We're just talking. Like, we're just bullshitting. That's what we do. And that's why I take the time. Like, number one is, I think is part of the reason Scott calls me everybody's friend, is because I I don't just, I've had Shane Hazel on my show 2 times. I've never talked about libertarianism. Not one time. Like, you know, like I don't care about your philosophy. How are we engaging in the world? I talked to Shane about what it's like to be a father and homesteading, being a carpenter. You know, like I don't talk to him about being a libertarian. Who cares? Like, whatever. I'm a libertarian. I know the ideology. I know the economics. I don't need you to tell me how it works. You know, like, why am I going to have you on my podcast to tell me something I already know?
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I
know,
mean, that's what it can tend to get to, and I'm guilty of it too. But you know, just putting on these libertarian circle jerks. But yeah, honestly, I think if you look through our text messages and you looked up libertarianism, you probably wouldn't find
you
it.
probably
'Cause,
would find it very
uh,
few times, if ever. Yeah,
right.
it's not a subject you and I talk about. Um, but it's like this dude you're about to have on your podcast on the 16th. This dude looks like a fucking, like, he's like a vintage rock, man. It's like the guy Rock wishes he could be, you know? Like,
Oh yeah, well, you know what's funny is that he's like very libertarian leaning too, but we don't like talk about that stuff. He's a freaking bodybuilder, right? He's from the old school 90s kind of bodybuilding area. He's 53 and the dude has like visual abs. He's in great health. And you know, he was a musician at one point too. Me and the dude just shoot the shit about, you know, bodybuilding and different stuff like that too.
yeah.
So you know, I'm super stoked to be able to talk to him again. That's gonna be the third time I've had him on the show. The second time I had him on, I had Rob Wolf, dude who like popularized the paleo diet, and then right before we finished the call, he literally said, "Yeah, I'm going on Joe Rogan tomorrow." I'm like, yeah. It was unbelievable, and that episode actually got pulled down off YouTube for vaccine misinformation. But yeah, that's a whole other
That
topic.
came to be true.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I cited a study. I read the
You should
study.
re-upload it. You should. You should be like, all right, y'all were wrong. I was right. There you go.
This is relatively recently. It was up for like 6 or 7 months too. And they fucking pulled it down. Those fucking assholes. But yeah, no, I'll talk to anybody about anything. And over the last couple weeks, I'm really glad that I got to have like just coaches on, like people who coach people through physical fitness or even just life coaches.
Mm.
It's just really cool to just see things from a different perspective and to kind of deload my mind from the globalism stuff or political stuff because you know much better than me. Sometimes that shit, it's like it's all doom
It's
and gloom.
overwhelming.
Yeah, yeah. So
You'll turn into Alex Jones.
oh yeah,
Like,
yeah, for
like
sure.
it's easy when you start digging into this stuff and you really like start encompassing yourself in it. You're like, oh, I know why this motherfucker's so crazy.
Yeah.
That no, he makes perfect sense. Yeah, okay, yeah, he makes perfect sense now. Now that I'm reading all this shit, okay, yeah, I get it. I get why he's a fucking nut job. Like I'd be a nut job too if that's all I did all the time. Like no, like like my wife being apolitical, good for me. Having a job, good for me.
Yep.
Because otherwise, I would be buried in this stuff, and I'd be like, I'd be insane. You know, I'd go nuts.
Yeah, I think I've listened to podcasts a handful of times before I go work out, and like I've noticed myself doing it because I felt like I really had to get the content in and talk to the guest. But then I'm like, no, I have to shut this off because this is the time where I'm focusing on this, right?
Yeah,
I'm no longer focusing on political stuff. I turn on whatever music I'm feeling that day and just hit it,
go with
right?
it. Yeah,
Yeah, I can't do the politics and trying to work out just because it gets me in a fucked up mindset. I'm not there to move the weight and make myself better. I'm there on a separate purpose if I'm supposed to do a political podcast. So
right.
as soon as I pick up the iron, it has to be some kind of music that generally heavier stuff that you can't understand a single word they're saying. But yeah,
Fuck yeah,
that's neither here nor there. Fuck yeah.
yeah. Like,
Mhm.
hell yeah, cattle decapitation. Let's go.
I've been listening to Revocation because they just put out a new album. Revocation, Necroptic, I think the one band is called.
Did you see
Some
Testament has new music out?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I saw a little clip. They got those on YouTube. They have the shorts,
Yeah,
and I saw a little short of one of their new songs called World War III.
is that off? I wonder if that's off their most recent album, Titans of Creation. I think it was
That
called.
might be Alpha Titans of Creation.
Okay, yeah, I
I'm
thought you
so
were thinking.
behind. Like I told you, I don't listen to new music, so I
Oh,
just,
dude,
I just, I just had the clip pop up on my YouTube the other day. I was like, oh, nice. It was like, and it said New Testament World War III. I was like, all right, cool.
yeah, I think that's off Titans of Creation. That
Could
came
be
out. I
possibly.
think that came out last year. I
Yeah.
honestly I
Well,
like a lot of
last
their
year's
new
new
stuff.
for me.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, most of
I
these albums
still
I've been
don't have
listening.
a clue what the hell happened last year.
Fair enough, dude. It ever since 2020, it's all kind of been a blur.
Yeah, it's all the same fucking year.
Yeah, yeah, we're getting out of it though, slowly but surely.
Well, let's wrap this up. I smell that food's almost done. I'm ready to eat.
Oh, holy shit. Yeah, no, my fiance's in the other room sleeping with the dogs, so I'm sure.
He's making T-bones, so I'm like, yeah,
Okay.
just starting to
Yeah.
smell it. Yep.
I'm gonna walk through the door and I can already hear this. Axton, I'm gonna walk through the door and all you're gonna hear is his tail's wagging. That's how you always know where he is. Sarah told me the one day she got up and she couldn't find him because the lights were off in the bedroom, and then she said she just heard. She's like, okay, so he's right there.
Well,
Yeah, man.
the dog, our dog, the one dog of ours that sleeps on the floor because Boogie and Butters like take over the whole bed. But Slayer, he doesn't have a tail, so like we don't have that benefit. so, so I'm like, I hope I don't trip over this big motherfucker right now. But yeah, any closing thoughts on the whole conversation of what we were talking about? Like, I hope people understand what we were getting at, and I think it came through. This is just the way that Kyle and I talk with each other. So
Yeah. Nah, dude, embrace humanity, reject globalism, accept the fact that we are
I'm a
all
humanist. I'm a
yeah,
humanist. I love humanity. I love people.
we're,
I love all
we're,
people. Those kids
we're
at Sandy Hook did die. I was mistaken. I apologize. And that FBI agent is suing me.
yeah. Jesus Christ. Yeah, dude, that's a whole freaking mess. Quick side note, the episodes that Abby Martin and Robbie Martin did on him were really interesting, and there's a lot there that I didn't know, so I'd recommend anybody go check that out. But yeah, man, check out that clip of Dime. If you look up Dimebag Darrell's speech, it'll be the first clip, and it's him with a
I'll
camera
put that
facing a
motherfucker in the
mirror.
show notes.
There you go. Yeah, but just listen to that, and I think that is like the most beautiful summary of the conversation that we're having, and it really struck a chord with me, and it's always stuck with me. And just listen to some older music and appreciate the all the ugly imperfections. Listen to some live music, and definitely go outside, touch grass, and go to a live concert sometime, and do a shot with people,
You need
man.
to quit saying that to people.
It's a little tongue in cheek, but honestly, um, no, dude, all the live events that me and the band played, it reminds me why I do what I do. And I would love to see some more people that I know off the Twitter sphere come to the live events and just hang out because I don't know. There's something about just going out and feeling the drums in your chest. That's been a feeling that's been with me ever since I was 15 years old, going to see Job for a Cowboy. It's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can't recommend people do shit like that enough. Get outside, just enjoy people's presence, because that's really what they're trying to take away from us. And I don't think we should let them.
All right, dude. Plug.
Sure. In Liberty and Health, a common crown. You can find me on Twitter at Kyle Matovcik. Last name is spelled Matovcik. And Tommy, I really appreciate you having me on, dude. And we'll definitely have to do it again sometime.
Oh yeah, dude. It's always fun, man. All right. We end that recording right now.